All right, welcome to class. This is like the fourth time I've tried to record this because, well, it's me. Today we're going to learn relative clauses. We're going to practice. Let's forget the word learn. We're going to practice relative clauses because we're going to learn nothing. We're going to practice relative clauses. So what's a relative clause? Good question. Grammar names in English, in any language, are terrifically boring. That's why when you start learning grammar, your brain shuts off immediately because grammar names suck. They have no joy in them whatsoever. They sound extremely technical, and it's only kind of annoying people who tell you what they mean. And so that's why we naturally step away from grammar, because only pessoas chatas, kind of have a relationship with grammar, as we call them, grammar Nazis, because they're a pain in the ass. And they vote right. Sorry. All right, so what we mean with relative clauses is we're going to use the words who and that to link two sentences. Two sentences that are can be on their own. For example, Cian is the teacher, and he is from Ireland. They're two perfectly good standalone sentences. Both sentences have a subject, a verb, and an object. And we know, in English especially, we must always have a subject, a verb, and an object. Let's look at our little picture again, our favorite one. We know that the subject is the protagonist of our story, and every sentence must start with a subject. If your sentence does not have a subject, we call that the expletive, and we use the word usually there. For example, there is someone at the door. And then we say, who is it? And we say, it's John. And then we say, well, John is at the door. So in the absence of a specific subject, or if I want to introduce a subject, there is my expletive. There are. But we're not dealing with there today, Cian. Keep on track. Yes, sir. But what's important here is in English, we always need to use a subject first. In Portuguese, no. Podemos começar com podemos. Preciso, vou, vai. We can start with verbs because we have subject-dependent verbs in Portuguese. Vou, sou eu. Well, sou eu is actually fucking terrible. Oh, no, that's good. Sou eu, precisamos, podemos, whatever. In Portuguese, we don't have to start with the subject. In fact, we don't even use the whole verb. I can say, estou indo, or, fuck it, tô indo. We just cut things in half. It's fantastic. We do samba with Portuguese. In English, no, we have to follow this order. Subject, verb, object. The subject is always, generally, I, he, or she. Why? Mathematically speaking, I'm talking to you, so I'm always going to talk about my experience, my thoughts. So I. And he or she, why? Because we love fofoca. We love gossip. We love to talk about a person, good or bad. And it's easier to gossip about one person than it is to gossip about 10 people. So I, he, and she are our most common subjects. They truly are. Of course, then we have our verb and our object of the sentence. And the object could be pizza or the object could be Mary. Yes, Mary's an object in grammar. So in this case, we have two sentences. Both have a subject, verb, object, but I want to link them together somehow. Cian, just press the delete button. Oh, I did it. But here we say, for example, Cian is a teacher. He is from Ireland. All right, but I don't want this because this forces me to have a full stop. It's introducing that second clause. So how do I make it just one clause? Well, instead of he, I'm going to use the word who. Because we know when we're trying to discover a person, our question word is always who. Always. We're going to look at something complicated in a second, but it's always who. So, in this case, Cian is a teacher who is from Ireland. I can, if I want, be a little informal and say Cian is a teacher that is from Ireland. Beautiful. There's no difference between the two. But what's important, I must have this. I cannot say Cian is a teacher is from Ireland. There must be a subject. And in this case, there is the subject. But let's look at another example. We'll say, well, Cian is the teacher And Jane told me about him. All right. So we're going to say Cian is the teacher. And then, so we have here, let's just link this other sentence. I didn't even need to do that, Cian. Oh, fuck it. Okay, so Cian is the teacher Jane told me about. Now, so here we have two subjects, two verbs, and two different subjects as well, which is important here. Two different people and our objects. We'll look at something very complicated in a second. We're not supposed to end on prepositions, but we'll have a bit of fun with that. So Cian is a teacher that Jane told me about. So in this case, that becomes my conjunction. If I want to, I can use it, or Cian is the teacher who Jane told me about. If I want to, I can use it. If I don't have to. Why? Because we have two separate subjects, two separate people. Here, this information, we need this here, first of all, because we don't have a subject. If we have this, we can't use it because it's the same subject. You know, it's the same person. So we want to just provide more information about Cian. In this case, we have a separate person, a separate subject. So Cian is a teacher that Jane told me about, or for example, Cian is a teacher that I told you about. So once again, I can, because I have that subject there, because in this case I have a separate person, I told you about. We can just have the two sentences side by side, or just create one sentence. And if we want to, we can do that. Now, just to be a little complex, we're not allowed officially to end sentences with prepositions. We're not. So, this is going to be a little complex. What we're going to do is say that Cian is the teacher. And so I'm going to put about here. About whom? Jane told me. This is awesome. It's very complex. It's a little unnecessary. Well, we don't use this structure anymore. Let's just make that clear. If I were to say, for example, I like the people I live with. All right, so we would say here, for example, I live with people. I actually live with, I live with my two kids and my three cats and my three dogs. And one of my cats just got a fractured hip because he got hit by a car and he's in a hospital. I'd rather be hanging out with him than doing this, but I love you, but I love my cat more. So I live with people and I like those people. I do. My kids are fucking awesome. So we know the people in this case are objects, right? We're talking about objects. So I can't really end a sentence. I'm not allowed to end a sentence on a preposition. I'm not. I have to do something fantastic here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sentence. I'm going to separate it here. So I like this first part. There's nothing wrong there. And almost like with a relative clause, I'm going to use the with here. But I can't say with I live. So what do? With whom I live. Why? Because the question word for, first of all, our relative clause, generally it's always either that or a question word. But I can't do this with that. I can't use with that. That's very fucking confusing. So let's look at, like if I say this question, I live with my kids. So here we have, let's make it all colorful so it's simple. My subject, my verb, and my object. So the question word to find the subject. So if we want to know who is this person, the word's what? It's who. Who helps us discover subjects. So we would say who, which would be in yellow, and then the rest of the question is just the rest of the question. Lives with your kids. That's how we find out the subject. Who lives with your kids? I live with my kids. But maybe I want to discover the object because I know you live with someone, but I don't know who. So in this case, The question word for objects is not who. If I want to discover an object, a person, it is whom, not who. So a lot of people get very confused, especially natives, over the difference between who and whom. Most natives think whom is just the formal way to say who. No. Whom is when we're talking about the object of the sentence. Who is when we're talking about the direct subject. So the question, the proper question to discover this would be, whom do you live with? So whom, because we're trying to discover the object of the sentence. And we know we're not allowed to end on a preposition. So what would we do? With whom do you live? Now that is proper formal grammar structure. Once again, just to promote my books, when I write narrative in my books, it's always with very formal structure. You always have a juxtaposition with narrative against dialogue. Dialogue is always the way people speak, and not just the way people speak, but your particular character is going to have a vernacular that gives them dimension, you know, and so all your characters don't sound the same. But your narrative is always going to have formal structure, unless your narrator is a character, unless your narrator is, you're putting a voice to the narration. But formal narration should always have formal structure. So this is the correct way to actually ask this question. Excuse me, with whom do you live? Oh, I live with my kids. Now, at the end of the day, nobody uses this structure. Why? Well, like, let's say you're on a street and everyone, the correct direction to drive in that street is from left to right, which is the formal direction of time. But everyone drives from right to left. What's easier? Change the people or change the street sign? It's just easier to fucking ignore the street sign and change that and just, you know, then trying to convince people to go the other way. And that's kind of what happens with grammar and language throughout the centuries. Language is always changing and shifting. And yeah, like people who study the roots and the formality of grammar, they get angry. They get angry because people don't use grammar the way it's supposed to be used, god damn it. But fuck them, because that's just what language is. Language is constantly evolving. The Shakespeare that we pronounce today sounds so radically different to the way people spoke in that time, because English is so radically different today to what it was before. Language is organic. It's constantly shifting and changing. And it's so gradual you don't notice it. But in that essence, that formality is completely and utterly lost. So, I mean, the correct question here is, whom do you live with? But every single person on earth will ask this question, who do you live with? And every single native will tell you that whom is the formal version of who. And that answer is horseshit. Whom is how we ask about objects. Who is how we ask about subjects. It's actually kind of simple, really. In the same way that as a subject, the person will be I, but as an object, the person transforms into me. We understand that logic. The person is he, transforms into him. The person is she, transforms into her, and so forth. So, in the same way, as a subject, I, he, and she, the question word is who. And as an object, me, him, and her, the question word is whom. Of course, it should transform. It should be a little bit different because it's on both sides of the things. One person is a doer of the action. The other is the receiver of the action. All right, so let's do a couple of examples of the other one, and then I'm going to pack up my computer. Not pack up my computer because I got more class to teach, but I'm going to have a sleep on my sofa before my afternoon, evening classes. So let's look at a couple here. We'll see, for example, the woman lives next door to me, is a doctor. All right, so we have a bunch of things here. So let's look at what the two sentences might be. For example, the woman is a doctor. Well, the woman lives next door to me. She is a doctor. Maybe. Fucking terrible sentence. But either way, okay. What we want here, well, we know we're starting with our person, and we'd say we have two sentences. That's one sentence, and then this is my second sentence here in the middle, where we're combining the two sentences. So what's missing here is what? Who. The woman who lives next door to me is a doctor. So in this sentence, we have my subject here, my verb, and my object. And this is kind of like almost like an embedded question. I mean, it's a sandwich, right? I mean, it's the same thing we do when we put our object inside a phrasal verb. We're doing kind of the same thing. We're shoving this extra information, the information that explains who she is. We're putting it inside the sentence like a sandwich. It's the mortadella in our sandwich. And then this is the other information. And we have there as well, what? A subject, a verb, and an object. And as well, we could say the woman that lives next door to me is a doctor. What we can't do is this. We need who, because who functions as our subject. We need who in this sentence. We can't abandon it. The woman who lives next door to me is a doctor. Now, how would you say that sentence better? My neighbor is a doctor. As much as we're practicing this structure, let's not forget proper sentences are good sentences. Good sentences are proper sentences. That's a fucking terrible sentence. Like being like that expression KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid. Make your sentences as simple and as clear as possible. Use as least words as possible. Don't try to be fancy. Don't try to sound intelligent, because you're going to come across as the opposite of that. As Bolsonaro. You're going to come across like, if you confuse, the more pieces you put into your sentence, the more chances you will make a mistake. And so if I make my sentence confusing, there's a chance that you will get lost in that sentence, and there's also a chance that I will get lost in that sentence. And so if I want to convey a message, if I want to say something, we'll say it clearly, always. So don't be scared of being clear and direct and being simple. Simple does not mean stupid. Stupid is trying to sound intelligent and fucking it up completely, and making the person who's listening to you feel stupid. That's how you know you're stupid. So keep it fucking simple. Keep your sentences clear, concise, like little blocks of Lego. And the beautiful thing about simplicity is everyone can understand. The scary thing about simplicity is that it exposes you. Either you have something new and novel to say, or you don't. And if you don't, just let other people speak. Listen. Just experience and enjoy. But if you do, keep it as simple as possible. Allow everyone to come into the conversation. Allow other people to be involved. Simple language is beautiful. It requires courage. On the other hand, we're learning this, so ignore everything I just fucking said. So let's look at a couple of grammar examples. The people we met last night, so the people we met last night were friendly. That's lucky. That could go anyway. All right, so in this case, we don't have a that or a who, but where would we put it? So we would put it here if we wanted to. So in this case, we don't need it. Why? Because, again, we have a subject, a verb, and an object. And we have two sentences joined together. The people were friendly. We met them last night. So that's my two ideas, and then this is the mortadella in the middle. But because we have a subject here, and again, they're very different people. They're not the same people. It's a very important factor. Then we can remove it. It's perfectly fine. We don't need it. But in this case, we do. Well, no, in this case, we don't. The next case, let's look here. We'll say the people work in the office are very friendly. So in this case, why is it all dark like that? In this case, we do need the who or the that. And where do we put it? We put it right here. So why do we need it? Because here we have our verb and our object. And then, of course, we have the bread here. There, that's our bread. You're supposed to be that as well. Thank you. Oh, come on, really? There. All right, so here, let's say I remove it. I have the people work in the office are very friendly. So the people are very friendly. The people work in my office and they're very friendly. That's my two ideas. So in this case, I can't just start on a verb. If we don't have a subject, we have to introduce a subject. And again, this functions like an expletive in a way. And if I want to, again, the people that work in the office or the people who work in the office are very friendly. We'll do one more. Give me one more from the book here. I like the people I work with. We did this one. I like the people I work with. Nothing wrong with this sentence. If we wanted to, we would put it here. I like the people that I work with. But we learned something kind of cool, remember? I like the people with whom I work. Fuck yeah. It's kind of cool. It's neat. It is. It's very formal structure, but it's awesome. I like working with these things. What I can't do, I can't say this. I like the people with that I work. No, we can use that or who, and actually as well, I can say whom. Whom is actually the proper structure. I like the people who I work with. This is how everyone uses it. And as well, I like the people whom I work with. That's proper grammar. That is the way you're supposed to do it. Because why? Because they are the object of the sentence. I'm the subject. So they are the object. So they must be what? Blue. Now, when we're looking at with whom, I can only use with. So let me just cross this out. I can only use this idea, this structure, with a question word. I can only use it with who, what, where, why, when, how. I can only use this formality with these. For example, the demon returned. Returned to where? I would say the demon returned where it came from. All right, so we don't want to end on from. We're not allowed to. So we're going to use a fancy old word here. And we still use this in literature. The demon returned. And you might have heard this maybe in some, maybe, I don't know, some Cradle of Filth songs or some Edgar Allan Poe or some, more than likely, episodes of The Simpsons. The demon returned from whence it came. And that's it. Like from whence is just a very old formal version of from where. The demon returned from whence it came. Very, very old. But we still use this. In fact, this expression, it returned from whence it came. I mean, people write this into books. People write this into TV shows. People use it in their black metal songs. Whatever they do. And once again, it's just a fun little word. Let me see. What's another possible one that I could fucking do? I can't think. I really should prepare these videos. But I like to keep it as original as possible. I can't think of any more. I could, but I'm just going to sit here saying, I could edit that out, but I'm not going to. Because I'm going to literally press stop on this in about 1 minute, and then I'm going to simply just edit the first 2 seconds and edit the last 2 seconds and put it straight onto YouTube. And if you're watching this far, you're like the one person who keeps watching. So thank you. I love you. Now, let's move on. Yeah, that's it. All right. Is that all we're going to do? That's it. Yeah, I like the people I work with. Can we do one more of these just to have a bit of fun? Okay, yeah, no, let's look at something. Like anytime you write a formal letter in English, every single time, how do you start the formal letter? To whom it may concern. So once again, most natives think that whom is just a formal version because the only time they ever use it is when they write a formal letter. And they don't know why. They just, if you're writing to the government, you're writing for a job interview, but you don't know, you don't like know, Dear Mary, and you want to just keep it as emotionless and as formal as possible, you always write to whom it may concern. And there you go, like to whom. It may concern to John or blah, blah, blah. So the letter is to this person, but it is to whom, not to who, because it concerns John. John is the object of our sentence, so it is to John. But we can't just say to whom. This letter is to whom. No, we need a little more information. And what could we do here? Holy shit, I just realized I am semi-slow. To whom that it may concern. Because we're linking two sentences, we're linking two ideas. If we wanted to, we could, but we're not going to. We're going to remove that. And just, that's exactly how you said the letter. That's it. That's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it on confusing you. Because, I mean, that's how I go to bed every day, is just confused. That doesn't stop me from waking up the next morning. Because that just happens naturally. All right. So that's it. So if we look back really closely, Jesus. If we look back really quickly, what are we looking at here? Our clauses, we're linking two sentences. So Cian is a teacher who is from Ireland. In this case, we need the clause because we can't just say Cian is a teacher is from Ireland. And we don't want to say Cian is a teacher, he is from Ireland. We want to pretend it's one sentence. So to pretend it's one sentence, we have to do that. And the who is very similar to here. In this case, we have two different people. So because we have two different people, we can just leave it as is. Cian is a teacher Jane told me about. Or Cian is a teacher that Jane told me about. That was it. Then we looked at this. I like the people with whom I live. Or, yes, normal structure is perfectly fine. Normal people, every single person says, I like the people I live with. There's nothing wrong with that. You are allowed to end on prepositions. And holy shit, my camera's dropping. And grammarians, yes, grammar people will always get angry, but that's perfectly fine. The relationship between grammar people and writers, for example, is that writers write and grammar people fix up what they wrote and make it look grammatically perfect. They become our editors. And both, one needs the other. The grammarians are like the engineers, and the writers and the artists are the architects. The engineer on their own will just make everything look like square blocks, and every city will look ridiculously dull. The architect on their own will put everything at ridiculous angles, and everyone will die because the architect doesn't respect the laws of physics or how to do things as cheaply as possible. But together, the engineer and the architect can create cities that look beautiful, but at the same time are safe and financially viable. In the same way with art, it's the left and the right brain, the subjective and the objective. And in even creating a book, people who study grammar don't know how to write books. They don't. They're not creative people. They know how to look at books and to deconstruct the grammar and deconstruct the story, but they can't create a story themselves because they only know what grammar looks like. The writer is shitty at grammar. They are. But they just wildly create things from nothing. But then the things they create are laden or full of problems and errors. And so the grammarian, the editor, and the copy editor with the writer together can create something that is visually pleasing, but at the same time wildly creative. Each on their own, the writer on their own, which is like my things are like my first books are full of grammar problems because I'm dyslexic and I do my own editing because I have no money and I do everything myself. And because of that, yeah, there's tons of grammar errors because I see when I look at words, they look like IKEA instructions for putting together furniture. Words to me are like hieroglyphics. They're strange looking. But as I've progressed in writing, I'm learning to edit, and of course I work with my wonderful editor Anna Vanti in Greece, and she helps to copy edit most of my work and get rid of most of my errors. But once again, like people who only understand grammar and become the engineers of language, those people who study letters and study language, they themselves don't know how to craft a story. They only know how to tell you what a story is because they're looking at a story, but they can't build one from nothing. But they can point one out when they see it in the world. So they become the academics and they become the engineers of looking at style and structure and telling you what's wrong with it. But they themselves are incapable of imagining an idea. But together, you get some good stories, and that's an important thing. You cannot have one without the other. And so in this case, what do we do here? Yeah, we're saying fuck the grammarians, essentially, because we don't care. This is how you use that structure in today's society. No one cares. We move on. Language adapts, language changes. Get with it. Revolution is for the young. The old will never understand the fire that they're creating. They won't because the old are conservative. And they're conservative because the older you get, the more comfortable you become with yourself. And the more comfortable you become with yourself, the more willing you become to a very wrong fucking world. Because you only think about your own salvation and your own equanimity and your own inner balance. And then you allow the fires to rage around you. It's the young who live in the world. It's the young who set fire to the world. Like those young girls in Iran who are setting fire to an archaic regime. It's the young who have passion. It's the young who are willing to die for something that matters. It's the young that haven't started acquiring possessions yet, that they're scared that they'll lose these possessions. No. And so the same thing, it's the young who transform language. If we understand anything about today's rebellion with language in our Western world, that's all it is. It's the youth of today transforming the meanings of words. Yeah, and revolutionizing language and forcing everyone to adapt to that language. It's beautiful. It's annoying, of course, because I'm old. I'm fucking 43. I don't want to change shit. I barely enjoy changing my socks. Of course it's annoying, but it's beautiful and it's brilliant, and they should. And when my daughter turns 19 or 20, I expect her to set fire to the world too. And when my son gets to that age, I expect him to set fire to that world too. And I expect to not understand a lick of it, but I expect to understand why they're doing it. And that's what it is, because we get old and we get comfortable and we only think about, well, you know, I am not the broken world around me. We think about our own inner peace, and that's a right thing, but it's also, we have to give the space, we have to give the encouragement to young people for setting fire to the fucking world. So to all those girls in Iran who are currently saying, fuck you to the Ayatollah, bless you. You're fucking amazing. Each and every fucking one of you. The bravest human beings on this goddamn planet right now. And that's a beautiful thing. All right, as always, love the people who love you. Everybody else is just a piece of shit. I'll see you in the next video. I have no idea when that will be because they're very few and far between. And this was only decided to do on a whim. But look at that. I spent 40 minutes with you when I could have been asleep on my sofa with my cats and worried about my other cat, Fluke, who's currently in a vet at the moment, on a drip, with a broken hip. And so that shit pisses me off. It doesn't piss me off, it makes me sad. It makes me sad, but I'm not gonna cry here. I will, I probably will. All right, I'll see you in the next video.